Okay.
All right, folks, we want to honor your time.
It was unincorporated.
This is wonderful, by the way. I'm a new friend of Pushpa. I don't know most of you, even though many of you have known Pushpa for a few days, right?
Yeah, a few.
So I'm just going to take a moment and just give you a heads up as to what the format's going to be. So first of all, thank you for being here. It is so wonderful to see the community come out like this for an event for someone who's willing to share their story and hopefully have that be a benefit to others. So if you haven't already gotten a door prize ticket, I've still got a bunch of these. You're not allowed to sell books at the library, so we're going to give some away for free. We, as if I had anything to do with this other than the honor of introducing Pushpa. Pushpa's got, I think, 16 or 17 books in the back to give away for free, which is really fun. If you don't get one for free and you'd still like to buy her book, you got the QR code behind me. It's available on Amazon, and they ship it pretty quick. So
Really quick, yeah.
it's a neat setup. So Pushpa's talk is going to be about her story being adopted against her family's will from East India and raised in Corvallis, Oregon. And that's a massive topic in and of itself. But as I had the privilege of getting to help her just put together some flyers and promote this around, I actually finished reading the book.
Good.
So now that I've read the book, which is still only a portion of her story, I realized that this requires a bit more of an introduction than just a subtitle. And so the phrase that I have here for you is, quite frankly, a trigger warning. There's a lot going on. There's a lot more than just being adopted against her family's will and moved across the world and raised in our lovely community of Corvallis. There's context that includes, quite frankly, human trafficking, physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. There's a lot going on that's going to be talked about here. And so we realize that it's important to tell you that because if that's going to be a challenging talk for you to overhear, we want to make sure that you know that ahead of time and that you have an exit.
Hi.
So as I mentioned that, library, what do you call it, basement level that you will not be able to access your car at the end of this talk because it's going to go longer than library hours. So if you feel the need to remove yourself from the presentation due to the trigger warning we gave you, or just move your car, this is a good time to do that. Okay. I also want to give you a heads up that if you feel like you have some questions, please feel free to save them. If you feel comfortable asking them at the end, we'll do Q&A at the end. Or even just write them down on the index cards provided, and I can read the question for you if you don't feel comfortable reading the question for yourself, and that's okay. Yes?
The parking, is it the back parking lot closed? Or just
The back parking lot that's surface level is all good.
Okay.
But the underfloor basement is going to be locked in, I don't know, a few minutes or something.
A few minutes run.
Yeah. So that's what the index cards are all about, all that good stuff. There's also water and food back there. And card B, many of you know this, but it still feels like it's good to give them a shout out, I guess, for better words, or for lack of better words. Card B is local in Corvallis. This is the Center Against Rape and Domestic Violence. And Card B couldn't make it here tonight. We did talk with them ahead of this. And they wanted to make sure that you know that if you or someone you know needs them as a resource, they help people get through, or rather get out of, domestic, sexual, physical abuse scenarios. They have a 24-hour hotline, which is on the screen right now. And they also have a website with a lot more information, and that's what that QR code is for. So just please feel free to take a picture of the slide, and if you know someone that could benefit from their services, text it to them later. Ooh, we should silence cell phones. That would be a great idea, too.
Oh, is mine silenced?
So I'll leave that up for a second. So Pushpa's going to talk, and at the end we'll do a Q&A session, so please do hold questions until the end. And there's a class that I took called Toastmasters. Actually, I only took beginning Toastmasters, which is why I still say like, and but. But one of the things I remember from Toastmasters was they talked about how lonely it is, how scary it is to be what she's doing today, off to the side, about to give a talk in front of a bunch of people. So do Pushpa Devi a favor and clap her all the way up to the podium. Don't stop clapping until she actually gets up here, and obviously then just feels like, come on, stop clapping already.
I'm going to go really slow so I can just suck this up.
Did you introduce yourself?
Oh, my name is Michael, and I'm a new friend of Pushpa.
That's all we get.
He's way more than that.
our business coach connected us because we're both realtors and we're working on books, although mine has nothing to do with this. And our business coach, Coach Lisa B. at the Fenian Company, didn't know Pushpa is from Corvallis, where I currently live. Go figure.
Yeah.
So let's clap Pushpa up, and I really appreciate you being here for her. Let's hear what you have to say.
No. Oh my God. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. So Michael is way more than just a short-term friend. He's done all this for me, but he has a lot of humility. And he's probably one of the most professional realtors I know. So I'm just putting in a plug for him because I want him to get as much business as possible. So, yeah, he's just a great guy. And he had no expectations of this, anything in return. So that's the kind of person he is. And his wife's here, too, and she's amazing, too. So I just, first of all, just want to thank you guys for being here and for supporting me. Some of you know me, some of you don't. But I am so grateful that you would come here. I know this is free, and I'm glad it is because I can, I don't have high expectations from you to really serve you for some amount of money you paid. So I'm kind of glad it's free, but I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Whether I know you or not, I really appreciate you being here because this is a first-time run-through for me. And, I would like to talk more in the future, but I don't know. So this is going to be a fumbling through this for me. As, I've practiced, but I have my cards here if you want to know what I have in my hands. So anyway, you know that the name of my book is The Lucky Lotus. And I didn't even realize it until after I wrote the book and got the title and everything, why I named it that. In a way, I kind of knew, but I really didn't know till maybe a few weeks ago that really the lucky part of it had to do with how people perceived me. How everybody perceived me a certain way as an adoptee and a brown kid in a white community. They perceived me a certain way. They had a perception about that situation of me. The Lotus part of it was more like me trying to maneuver through this new world I was in, coming from the inside out. Who was I going to be in this world? And how would I respond to things? I was in such a foreign world that I had to really dig inside myself to figure out how I was going to maneuver. So that's the Lotus part of it. And to me, do they need chairs, Michael? The Lotus, to me, what it really represents is here in Oregon, we have a lot of mushy, mucky, silty ponds and stuff. And you know how you step in there and you're ready to go swimming and that stuff just squeezes through your toes. It's nasty and gross. It's really disgusting. But out of that, this little seed, if it's there's a little seed pod that can go in there and grow out of that nastiness and come through the water and come out, and it just comes out and it's this beautiful flower in the sunlight. And a lotus is so, when you see it, it's just so perfect, right? But you don't realize the struggle it has to go through to go from that nastiness, that bottom of the pond, through the water and come up into the sunlight. And so that's kind of what the lotus represents for me. It sort of is how I felt about my life. So that's how I came up with the title. Hi, Sarah. That's how I came up with the title. Was lucky was how people perceive me. The lotus is how I perceive myself, trying to grow out of that murky, muddy stuff and grow into something that would be somewhat presentable and beautiful in this world in some way. I didn't know what that was, but that's what it was. So I don't know exactly how a lotus flower grows, so if anybody in here, I'm sure Brenda probably knows, but I don't. And so that's just my version of what the lotus is. I don't know that that's factual. So, and what I kind of get out of the lotus is that through adversity comes this amazing beauty. Through adversity, there's this beauty. And so I think, when we go through adversity, we always think, oh man, this sucks. This really sucks. This really sucks. But at the end, when we look back, we go, wow, look at what I just did. Look at what I just got through. I just went through all that, and I'm still here, And so that's kind of, I guess I would say that was my mindset as I was writing this book. I wanted to show people that you can go through hell. You can go through all kinds of hell, but you can still do something beautiful in the world, and you can still create something out of that mess. So I was wondering, have you guys ever just punch someone right in the stomach? No? Yeah. Have you ever punched a pregnant woman in the stomach? Because that is what my father was doing to my mother when she was pregnant with me. He did not want me. He did not want to have a child. She was only 13 years old. So she was a child with a baby getting punched in the stomach. So that was my dad. That's a little overview of my dad. When I was born in India, I think I was born in the northern part, but then at some point we moved to Calcutta. I don't honestly know exactly where I was born. But my parents lived in a downstairs apartment, and upstairs was a lady named Rabia. She was also an Indian woman. We lived downstairs. We had, I don't know how big the room was. This is like probably my first memories that I can really recall, is being just this, maybe 2 years old, I would say, and having just some kind of little cloth around me, kind of like, the old-time diapers that people used to wash out. Something maybe like that. And just sitting in a dark room. Sometimes the light was on, sometimes it wasn't. There were no windows. It was just a dark room with a door in and out and a light bulb. And I remember just sitting on that floor and feeling the grit from the dirt floor on my feet, on my legs, my hands, my fingernails, my arms, and just waiting, sitting in that room, waiting for my parents to come back. They would just leave me in this room. And I could hear the clinking outside. I could hear people, and they would go by. And that devastation you feel when you're in hopes of something and it's gone? I'd have that moment of hope, and then it was gone. And then I'd keep listening and wait to see if somebody else would come. And then off in the distance, I'd hear my parents arguing. And I could hear them arguing, and then they would finally come and open the door. But in the meantime, while I was sitting there, I just had I know all of you know what it's like to be really, really hungry. Super hungry. to the point where it feels like someone just took their hand and twisted your stomach. That's what my stomach felt like. I have pretty vivid memories of that, and having a really dry mouth from being so thirsty. But there was never really any reprieve because we didn't have the money. My mom didn't have money. My dad didn't have money. We didn't have money. We worked, all three of us, worked as servants for Rabia, the lady that was upstairs. So even as a small child, I was working for her, giving out chai to foreign dignitaries and things like that, and making tea or whatever she wanted me to do. And I think it's interesting that people think that if you go through a lot of stuff, man, that's great. You're so strong. You're such a strong person. You went through all that. You're so strong. But in reality, you don't feel strong inside. And it's like you have to just be happy that you survived it. Not that you're strong, because you don't ever feel strong when you're going through it, to be totally frank. And sometimes, I think about that little 2-year-old kid sitting there with nothing to eat and nothing to drink and no parents that really were around much. And I feel like, man, that's so much to go through for a 2-year-old child. Because I am so separated from it now. Look at my life now, On the outside, it looks great. But I am so separated from it. But I can look back and go, that's my 2-year-old self having to deal with all that. And I wouldn't want that for anybody, to have to go through that. But I am just so grateful inside that I'm here right now to be able to talk about that I actually got through that I actually don't have to deal with that anymore. I can eat whenever I want, whatever I want, right? So I'm really grateful that I survived that. And I just remember my mom a little bit, my dad a little bit, the neighbor upstairs a little bit. And I remember that she worked next door at a tobacco plant. And so did my dad. And they were kind of friends. I don't know how much they were friends, but and my dad would have to go to work sometimes, and I would have to go with him. And it was not the greatest thing, because he would have to leave me in a guard tower. And you kind of feel like your child is going to be safe in a guard tower, right? A guard, safety. But in reality, it was not safe at all. In reality, here was this guard doing all kinds of things to me, chasing me around the room, pulling his, out of his pants, chasing me around with it, trying to put it in my mouth as a small child. I was probably 3 or 4 years old. And I would just, I just remember always looking for my dad. Where's my dad? Where's my mom? Trying to get the hell out of there. And there would be a point where I would just pee my pants. I don't know if that was from fear. I don't know. And he would get so pissed off at me for doing that, because he'd have to clean it up. And that's another one of those situations where I just think, man, I have a daughter. I can't imagine 3-year-old having to deal with that. A 3-year-old having to have some guy chase you around like that and do that to you. It's horrible. But, like, I'm here today, you know, and I'm so grateful that I'm here today. I'm so grateful that that didn't mess me up so much mentally that I can't not talk about it. Because if you would have had me doing this 5 years ago, it still would have been messing with me mentally to the point where I could not talk to you guys without crying about it. So I'm super grateful I got through that. And then the lady that was upstairs, Rabia, when I was 4, she and my dad put me into a boarding school. And I think she was getting me ready to be adopted at the time. But I'm not really sure how all that played out. So I was in the boarding school where Mother Teresa used to come. I don't remember, I don't know her or anything. I probably met her, but I don't know. And Rabia, that lady, one night, she was ready. She had my stuff together, had a car waiting for me, and I got in the back seat, and I was with a driver, but that's all I remember, is being in the back seat of this car with a driver. And I remember looking out the window, and my mom was standing there. So at this point, she was probably 19 years old. She's standing there with my new little baby sister, and I'm like kind of jealous, thinking, God, why does she get to be with my mom? How come I'm in this car and my sister's out there with my mom holding her, And I kind of got jealous and sad. And then the car took off. We went to the airport. I don't remember much as far as how I got from the car to my plane. I don't have any clue. I just know that I got to the plane somehow. Maybe they had somebody meet me. I don't know. Got on the plane. I flew to, I think it was Hong Kong and Tokyo and then to Hawaii. And next thing I know, I'm getting ready to land in Portland. And, Rabia had given me a dress to wear right before I left. And I liked this dress. And that was the dress I had on to fly here. But my adoptive parents had sent a dress to her for me to put on when I got off the plane so they would know who I was. Like, no one's going to know a little Indian kid like me in 1968 is, I'm the only kid on the plane. But anyway, so they had this dress, and I was on the plane. The flight attendant comes up, and she's like, all right, you got to put the dress on. And I'm like, I don't want to put the dress on. I don't really want to put the dress on. And I wasn't really the type of kid to fight a lot, so I begrudgingly put the dress on. But I put it on over my other dress. I don't think I wanted to take my dress off because I feel like that was the only thing I kind of had left of what I just left from. I don't know. That's just kind of what I think. So I put the other dress on top of that. And then I had gotten all these gifts. People were giving me gifts on the flight. And I had this bottle of perfume. And I thought, man, I just opened that bottle and I was like, man, this smells good. And I was like, all right, let me put a little bit on. I'm rubbing it on my hands and I keep putting it on. I had it on my legs. I put it all over me. And I used the entire bottle. Yeah. So you can imagine how strong it was on the plane, probably. And so the flight attendant comes back, and she's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I want to smell good. I want to smell like flowers when I get to America. So I really, I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing, but that was what I wanted to look good, I guess, or be good when I got here. So, and then once we landed, the flight attendant grabbed my hand, and she was walking me out there. And I just remember walking. That was 1968, so long time ago. And people could come into the airport. Remember how exciting that was? Like, yeah, I get to go pick up so-and-so at the airport. And so she grabs my hand. We're walking down the little walkway thing into the airport. And I just remember walking out there and going, just like looking like this and going, wow, like these people look like the nuns because they were all white. And that's really the only white people I had seen were the nuns at the boarding school. So here I was. You probably relate, right? Yeah, so I have another adoptee friend in here. She gets it. But, when you see a sea of white, when you've always seen a sea of brown, and then you're the only one, it's kind of it really messes with your mind. It really does. Because you're like, okay. And I think that was when I started realizing I'm in a new world. I got to survive this. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what this is. I just remember being, oh my God, like, I don't know what this is. So they took me home and showed me the house and everything else. And man, like, it was good and great. But, okay, I started out over here, Calcutta, with dirt floors, a tiny little house, my parents, India, and then here I was on the plane. I come over here, and I'm like, 5-bedroom house, 50 acres, all white people, in a small community, country, big city over here, but I'm out in the country. I'm scared shitless of animals. I mean, I was so scared of animals. And the first thing we had was dogs when I got there. So I had to immediately adjust to that. And not only that, but the loneliness and the isolation, that feeling I had had in that house in India, that loneliness and isolation in that little dark room was the same loneliness and isolation I had on 50 acres in America, where I was getting all the food I needed. So it was just kind of like this, I'm feeling the same thing over here. I didn't feel any different. I had one sister, but she didn't really play with me. She was 11, and she liked to just read books. So you can imagine, I was the kind of kid that liked to do things. So I was just kind of like, man, this is really lonely and isolating out here. And it was right out here in Soap Creek Valley. I don't know if you guys have been out there. Well, you live in my old house. She lives right in my old house that I went to. Yeah. So it's funny because I think I could feel what people thought of me. They thought I was lucky. My mom told everybody, she's so lucky. She's so lucky we adopted her. She came from all this poverty. Her mom didn't love her. Her mom didn't want her. So it was like all that coming at me all the time. All the time. And so as a small child, I think I was trying to be happy. I was trying to live that. I'm lucky, so let me just skip down the hall, I always skipped everywhere. I always sang. But I don't know if that was truly me Or was it me trying to be what my parents perceived me as? That's something I've yet to figure that out. So they had that 50 acres, and they subdivided it. And there were 5 of us, 5 kids in the family. They subdivided the land. And man, I don't know if you guys have ever been out to Soap Creek Valley. If you haven't, you need to go, because it's very magical out there. It's absolutely beautiful and stunning area. It's a little bit isolating, but it's absolutely beautiful. And my parents subdivided that land, and my mom, one of the pieces of land was supposed to be mine, right? And a few decades later, it was given to someone else. All the other kids got their property. I did not. And it just kind of like made me feel like I really am not a part of this family. I am the other one. I am the adopted child. I am that other person that I feel like all the time. This is not my head. My parents didn't even give me that land. So, it was just another, just another way of feeling so separated. And when I was little, my parents liked to go out to eat. They loved to go to Burton's and to To Yen. And man, it was always, excuse my language, but a shit show when we went out to eat. Because we would come rolling in, our family of 4, 3 white people with this kid, and man, everybody stared. Everybody. They would be like, and I mean everyone in the restaurant. It was very awkward. So my mom, she always had to make it even more awkward and start talking to these people and start telling them, oh, we adopted this girl. I know she looks different, but we adopted her from India. She just came from this horrible situation. They were poor. They didn't have any money. Her mom didn't love her or want her. I had to listen to that. My mom didn't love me or want me. And it was just like, okay, when you're a little kid, you keep hearing this, you keep hearing it, and you keep hearing it. Every time you go into a public place, it kind of starts building on you, right? You just start feeling like, man, my mom didn't really love me or want me. At first, I didn't want to believe it, but I began to believe it. And I began to believe that I was unlovable. And that kind of ruled my life for a long, long time. And I found that, I knew I wasn't the same because I had an accent. I had a really high-pitched Indian accent when I came. Kind of that British, whatever, the Indian British, with the British influence there. And so I would just study people. I would just listen to somebody talk and go, okay, I have to become more monotone, because I noticed that the Americans were really, talk monotone. And so I taught myself to get rid of my accent. And I can't tell you the amount of energy that took to just focus on people's talking and change it. So I did a lot of adapting. And my mom, not only would she say that when we were in these restaurants and stuff, not only would she say that I was lucky that I was adopted, but she would say, man, we are so lucky. Do you know that she didn't come with a disability? she came, and she has a really high IQ. She's really smart. So we are really lucky. We didn't get some kid with a problem. You know? I was like, wow, okay, at least I don't have a problem. I have a high IQ, you know. So that was constantly told to everybody also, which started creating a lot of pressure and expectations. My mom had really high expectations, almost to the point of ridiculousness. I mean, she loved Indian people, and that's why she wanted an Indian child. She loved Indian people, and she believed that all of us Indian people were brilliant, and that we all were successful. And so I had to live up to that. And there was no way. I could never fulfill what the expectations she had of me. It was just too much. And the funny thing is, even though she had all those expectations of me, I think the hardest thing that she really, really pushed on me was like almost immediately when I met her. I'd been traveling for 2 days. I just met these people I don't know. They're supposed to be my mom and dad and my sister. And she tells me to call her mommy. And I'm like, I couldn't connect to that. I just met you. You know, you're supposed to be my mommy? Like, it just felt so weird, you know, to have this strange woman telling me this. So, anyway, when I was probably in 3rd or 4th grade, I went right here, got my citizenship at the Benton County Courthouse. And man, this was going to be the best day of my life. Because you know what? Now, I was going to be a part of something. I was going to be an American. I wanted that so bad because I thought, now I will be a part of this. I'm not going to be that Indian kid anymore. I'm going to be American. I wore red, white, and blue all year long. You know, I loved it. I had little blue suede shoes. I had red shirts. I had blue skirts. I mean, I loved red, white, and blue. And I was so excited. And my mom, she taught at a 2-room school. And so she could kind of do whatever she wanted. I mean, she brought those kids to our house for field trips and stuff, which you could never get away with now. But she decided we could do a field trip with her class, and they could come watch me get my citizenship. So my mom gets me in the car that morning, and we're rolling to school, and we get to the school, and I'm like, oh, what is that guy doing with a camera? Because I hated getting my picture taken. You know why? Because it showed me how different I was from everyone else. So if it was my family with me, I stood out like a sore thumb. I didn't want to be in front of a camera. And so we roll up to the school. The kids are all outside. They're all excited. They're getting ready to go on the bus. And there's my mom's all excited. Yay, the Salem Statesman's here. They're going to, do an article on you. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be in front of the camera. That's all I cared about. We get out. We stroll over there. And they have all the kids behind me, getting them, we're getting ready to take some pictures. And I'm standing there holding the flag. I'm so freaking proud. So excited. I finally get to be a part of something. Meanwhile, my mom's sitting there talking to the reporter, telling him the whole story, or her, I can't remember, telling them the whole story about me. And it was just just listening to her and hearing her say her mom didn't want her. Her mom didn't love her. That's why, we adopted her. We saved her. It was just kind of like, wow, again. And then that didn't bother me as much as what she said later, which was, oh, and she lived under a house. She told the reporters, I lived under a house. And I had been trying to tell my mom for years, I did not live under a house. But somehow it got misconstrued to her that I was living under a house when it was really just downstairs. And it went right into the newspaper. And I saw it the next day, and I was like, now all the kids are going to think I lived under a house. Like, when you're a kid, that's the kind of stuff you think about. So that just kind of, really bothered me when I got my citizenship because I was so excited about it, but then I had to listen to her say that as I'm holding the flag and thinking, oh my God, here we go. And I think I kept trying to be a happy kid. I didn't, and I think I'm still kind of like this. I don't want anybody to know when I'm sad. I mean, who does? I don't like to share, which you wouldn't know by my book, but I don't like to share my own stuff. I really, really don't. And so I think even as a kid, I tried to put on this, I'm happy. So that everyone's perception of me kept being fulfilled. You're lucky, you're happy, things must be good. But on the inside, I was still trying to figure this out. How the hell was I supposed to manage this life with these strangers? I didn't feel connected to my parents right away. I didn't feel at home in a huge house. I was scared in that house because I was used to a small room. I wasn't used to a big house. I wasn't used to land. I wasn't used to hearing coyotes at night or whatever, and we heard all that stuff at night. So it was a really big adjustment. And I think just those first few years of my mom constantly saying, your mom didn't love you. She didn't want you. She didn't love you. She didn't want you. It just started soaking in. It started soaking into my heart. And I really, really began to believe it. I began to believe my mom didn't love me. She didn't want me. And now I'm, teenager, and I'm going, God, if my mom didn't love me, who's going to love me? Who's going to even like me? When you're a teenager, you're starting to think about dating. Who the hell is going to like me? I mean, that's a tough one when you're a teenager going, well, my mom didn't love me or want me, so, I don't know who I'm going to be with when I get older. How am I going to find anybody that would love me? I'm totally unlovable. And I found that I was trying so hard to adapt. I was spending so much energy dealing with adapting as a brown girl in a white community, adapting to the population, the differences in the population, and just that alone was a lot for me. And the language, even though when I was in the boarding school, I went in there knowing 3 other languages. But then in the boarding school, they would beat the hell out of you if you spoke anything but English. They'd take a ruler to you and beat you. And so I think it was pretty much beat into me that you forget those other languages. But even though they did that for that 2 years, when I got here, I still remember in my head, I could hear those other languages. I did for so long, I could hear them, but I didn't know what any of it meant. And I didn't know anyone to ask. Or was it even, the right thing to do, because you weren't supposed to speak anything but English. So it was a lot of adapting and trying to, hearing those voices in my head of different languages and going, I can't talk this way. I have to speak in English. And as I started getting a little bit older in high school, teenager, and thinking about who will ever like me, who will ever love me. My mother didn't love me. What am I going to do? Am I going to be single my whole life? I don't know. Do I go out with the black guys that like me? Do I go out with these white guys? None of them look like me. But I kind of like the way the white guys look. And some of these black guys are pretty hot. But I don't know. What is the proper thing to do? You got to remember, this was in the 70s, early 80s. It wasn't like you saw a lot of interracial couples. I didn't see any. Living in Corvallis, Oregon, no. I really didn't see a lot at that time. And so I was just kind of trying to figure this out. What do I date? A white guy? I guess because that's what I'm comfortable with. And that's really a bigger pool, a bigger pool of people. And I feel like all this stuff, all this crazy, stuff that I was dealing with is really like that lotus flower. I was trying to bring that seed up out through that mud and murky mire of stuff and grow out of it somehow and figure out, how was I going to make myself into something in this world that would be beneficial, that could feel love, that could feel peace, that could feel all these things. And it was that struggle, just like the lotus trying to grow, that has been really kind of how I relate to my life, is just trying to grow out of that mud and mire into something that's decent in this world. And I think there are so many different ways that we can look at life. We can look at life a lot of different ways. And how you look at me, you're all looking at me and you see me a certain way because the way I'm dressed, the way I look, the way my hair is, the way my skin is, whatever. You have a preconceived notion. But inside, you don't know what the hell I've been through. Just like I don't know what the hell you've been through. And I am never going to judge somebody by the way they look. Because, we can all look put together and we can look like we got it going on. And I've done that my whole life. You know how hard that is? I'm sure there's a lot of you here that know what it's like to put on that face of, I'm okay. I'm okay, but inside, man, I'm dying. I felt like that a lot. So, all right, we'll go on to the next part of my life, college. It was right before college. I met this guy, and he seemed like a really nice guy. Really cute, charismatic. Everybody thought he was great. And we hadn't been going out that long. He was a white guy. But we hadn't been going out that long. And one day I went over to visit him, and I don't know what happened. He just snapped. And we were right down off of 3rd Street in a little studio apartment he was in one of those houses. And do you know that he just got me up against a wall and just took my head and started banging my head on the wall. And at first I thought, I think he's going to stop. I think. And then I was like, this guy's not going to stop. And it just kept elevating and elevating, and I was crying. And I finally thought, Jesus, he's going to kill me. This guy is going to kill me. And I just remember thinking, man, I just have to scream bloody murder and hope to hell somebody hears me. So I just let out a huge scream as loud as I could get out. And the next thing I know, somebody's banging on the door. And he finally lets go of me. He walks over the door. And he's standing in front of the door, but he's trying to keep the girl from seeing me. He doesn't want her to see me. And I'm only 10 or 12 feet away. And I'm like trying to look around him. And I finally catch her eye. And she's like, do you need help? And I was like, yes. Like, get me the hell out of here. And, you know, she just came in, grabbed me. She just pushed him aside, basically. I was like, yeah. She just pushed him aside, grabbed me, and took me upstairs. And I just think back to that. I mean, even an 18-year-old, my little 18-year-old self, having to go through that and to have someone be that mean, I feel bad for my 18-year-old self. I really do. But I feel good for me right now because I'm so grateful that that woman intervened and helped me. I really don't think I would be here if it wasn't for that. And then, a couple years later, I was really getting into working out. I was running all the time just to deal with my mind. It was like, this is the only thing that is going to keep me going. Running, working out, running, going to the gym, running, playing racquetball, whatever I could do. The other thing I was doing was lots of lines of Coke. Yeah. And I could get it for free because somebody's roommate had free cocaine. And so I used to get it for free and just do it all the time and then go work out. Kill myself running and doing 20 miles on the bike or whatever I could do. And I was living life large. I had a really nice apartment, better than any of my friends. None of my friends were living like I was. My parents were paying for it. They were paying for school. They put me in this great place. And I was like, I had it made from the outside. I seemed like I was really lucky. I was living that lucky life. But on the inside, I wanted to die. And I just remember one day after running, I came back and I was like, I can't take this anymore. I can't take it. I'm done. And my mom had given me a pair of sewing scissors, and sewing scissors are really sharp. So at that time, I remember everybody was like, yeah, you can slit your wrist. You slit your wrist, you can kill yourself. I'm like, all right, I can do this. I can do this. And I remember being in that apartment and having those scissors and sitting there and just getting so mad at myself because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And I felt like a failure. And I was like, you chicken shit. You can't even kill yourself. You're a chicken shit. This was the stuff that was going on in my head. And I just wanted to get rid of the pain. I didn't want to feel anymore. I wanted it gone. And right about then, the guy I was dating comes barreling in the door and goes, "What the hell are you doing?" And I'm like, "I can't take it anymore. I just can't do this." And he took me to the hospital. They wanted to keep me there, but I was kind of a fireball, and they were like, "You need to stay here overnight." And I was like, "There's no way in hell you're putting me in a rubber room, and I'm not staying here." Because that was my mindset, that that's what they were going to do with me. And he was like, "You know what? I'll go home with you. I'll go home with her, sleep on the floor, watch her all night. And if that's okay." And they were like, "Yeah, as long as you come back to counseling tomorrow." So we went home. And the next day, I come back to counseling, and I talk for 45 minutes. I tell him my whole deal. And then he just looks at me and goes, "Pushpa, you have no foundation. And you know what? You will have to create your own foundation. No one can do this for you." And it was sort of this moment of, wow, he gets me. Just from listening to me for 45 minutes, he knew exactly what the problem was. And I felt empowered because I thought, now I have something to work on. I have to work on getting my own foundation. And you know what? I wouldn't want anybody to go through that. I don't want anybody to feel like that. It's the worst feeling to want to end your life and to be in that position that you don't feel like you even have the strength to do it yourself. But I am so grateful for the people that have come in my life that have helped me through those situations, and just so grateful to be here. Like, they're doing this. I wouldn't be here doing this if I hadn't had those people come through and help me in those moments. So I guess it was probably a couple of years after that, I met this guy and I thought, man, this is it. I finally found the guy. I finally found him. I think this is the love of my life. And he was a football player, so God, I kind of got to be the All-American, I got to be with a football player. And he was cute. All the girls thought he was really, really cute and everything. And, we dated for a long time. We got together. We ended up moving all over the country together with his job. And it was wonderful. But then, probably about 8 or 9 years into it, I find out my father died. My biological father. And I'm like devastated, because what I was told about my father was he was amazing. He was charismatic. He was this amazing man. And so I had that in my head playing all the time, that he was this amazing father. And when I found out he died, I was pretty devastated. So I thought, you know what? I got to go and get some counseling or something. I don't remember what I was thinking, but I found this lady who does, I don't know what you call it, but she had me lay down on a couch, and she's like, you close your eyes, and she talks you through this whole thing about you're floating down a river, and look over here, and this is, when you were born, and look over here, and this is what happened when you were 5 or whatever. I don't even remember. I thought it was so stupid. I remember thinking, this is not doing jack squat for me. I need something better than this. And so I got in the car. I paid good money for this. I get in the car. I go probably 2 blocks. And I have just this, like a black and white movie. It's the weirdest thing. It was like a black and white movie. I just saw my life in front of me. And you know what? It was me seeing my biological dad, who I thought was this amazing guy, sexually abusing me when I was like 2. And I just broke down crying. I fell apart in the car, and I just sat there bawled and bawled and bawled. And then I went, okay, I got to get my shit together. I'm going to go home. Went home to the guy who was the love of my life, and I never told him. I never shared that with him. He never, ever knew. And just probably a year or 2 later, we went our separate ways. And I think a lot of it was because I never opened up about that. I held it all in and never, ever told anybody. So it ruined that, we're still friends, but it ruined the relationship we had at the time because I didn't take the time to take care of myself and to share what I realized about myself. But I think I was feeling so bad about myself because this is what somebody did to me. I felt so dirty. I felt disgusting. And why would this great person love me if I'm that dirty, disgusting little child? Why would anybody love me? And so that relationship ended. And a couple years later, I ended up going, all right, I'm going to go to India. I decided. I'm kind of lonely. I'm kind of empty. My life is weird. Let me go to India. I got to go see where I came from. It's like 25 years after I had been adopted. So I go back, and I didn't plan to see my mother at all because I hated my mother. Why would I love someone who didn't love me or want me? But I got talked into going to see her. So I did go see her, and you know what? The minute I saw her, I immediately connected. There was an immediate connection that I can't describe. Seeing someone that looks like you, that you see yourself in, their mannerisms, their facial expressions, all that stuff, just kind of blew me away. But it healed so much stuff within me that I didn't even know could happen. So we were supposed to only spend 3 days together, but we spent a lot more time together. And she ended up explaining to me that, and you got to remember, we had to go through translators and different things because she didn't speak that much English. But she told me that I had been sent to the United States without her consent or knowledge. And that she did not know where I was. For the first 3 years that I was gone, she was told that I was in southern India. So she thought I was coming back. She thought I was down there going to school. But I never came back. And so for that 25 years, she prayed to have me come back. And she would tell her neighbors, and they didn't believe her. They thought she was crazy, that she had a child that had disappeared. So you can imagine when I came back, there were probably 40 people there staring at me. I'm not kidding. When I went back to the village where she lives, they were all around me, just staring at me because they didn't believe her, and some of them thought that maybe I was like a ghost, which was weird. Anyway, so, you go through life and you deal with all this stuff. And I know all of us have dealt with something. There's nobody that goes unscathed in life. You just don't. And it's funny because I am now in a relationship with someone who also he had an accident when he was 18. So he has been living this kind of a torturous life with a disability for the last 30-something years. And so now here I am living with him, and it's really interesting because just like me, growing out of that mud and trying to just make something beautiful out of this, my husband's the same way. So it's kind of cool that we have that connection, you know, that we've both been through that, and we're just like the Lotus, we're both living that Lotus life, you know. So I think that's about it. I think that's all I really wanted to share, Michael, and I'm running way the hell over. So I don't want to keep going. But thank you so much. I saw you pacing back there. Thank you so much, you guys, for letting me do this and just, you know, for creating this space, Michael. You're amazing. This is one amazing man, and I'm not joking. And he, yeah, and he, you know, he's a realtor, so please send him people. But anyway, I know that's a side thing. But anyway, thank you so much. I am very grateful to each and every one of you, and every one of you that I'm friends with or that I've had some part of my life, you know, we've intersected. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.